decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mindell. Pleased to see so many of you joining us on this Saturday morning. If you're new here, if you haven't already done so, be sure to smash the like button. We always appreciate that love. While you're at it, subscribe to our YouTube show, subscribe to the podcast edition of the show, get it delivered to your device automatically each and every week when we go live here on Saturday mornings, and of course after each and every Winnipeg Jets game when we go live with the Illegal Curve post-game show like we'll do later on tonight in about 14 or so hours after the Jets and the Calgary Flames.
Great post-game show, guys. I thought that was one of my best post-game shows of the entire year.
You were phenomenal on yesterday's post-game show there.
That's a good point.
A lot of insight, a lot of analysis, really, really able to sort of clear out the noise and get to the crux of the matter. You were certainly effective on yesterday's post-game show.
I appreciate it, Drew. I actually can admit honestly that I did not watch a single second of yesterday's game. I was at work at Hockey Manitoba. Obviously, Peter Woods won't like the fact that I was watching. He wouldn't like that if I was watching the Jets Wild game, and then I had to go pick up the kids from daycare, and then you know how that is, Drew, with getting them ready for dinner and everything like that. So I only watched the highlights, and I was following on the Illegal Curve Twitter account. And I might be wearing a Fireball toque right now, guys, but I promise I wasn't drinking a 40 of a Fireball last night after that Jets loss. But there are some questions that need to be answered here. And obviously, as you mentioned, the Jets and the Flames play tonight, and the Flames have been sitting back in Calgary, right, waiting 4 days for the Jets because they're they haven't had a game since Tuesday. And they've won 4 games in a row. So it's obviously two teams going in different directions. But we have a lot to talk about because this Jets team right now is coming off of probably their worst loss of the season, worst performance of the season. And they need to get this going in the right direction quick because they're quickly falling out of a playoff spot. That's what's happening here.
They are now in the last wild card spot in the Western Conference following last night's loss, the debacle in St. Paul. From once a 9-3-3 record, when Dave Minuk, the Winnipeg Jets are now 9-7-4 on the season, and a Colorado Avalanche team that has 3 games in hand and is only 1 point back of them are nipping hard at their heels, as it were. Before we welcome you, we do need to give away some stuff from yesterday's post-game show. We didn't get an opportunity to do so. So boom, right off the top, Fritchie 101, that is the hardest hitting comment from our friends at Tough Duck. You've won a toque from Tough Duck. So Fritchie 101, send an email to either myself, Drew at illegalcurve.com, or to Ezra at illegalcurve.com, and we'll get you hooked up with a prize from our friends at Tough Duck. The comment from Fritchie, not scoring on the 4-minute power play versus the Oilers was the catalyst to this losing stretch. You can't win when your special teams is complete trash. 55, Mark Scheifele is also irrelevant right now. Would love to see some fire from him. Agree with a lot of what Fritchie 101 said right there in the comment. Mark Scheifele, Dave, we talked about it on the post-game show last night. He needs to step up because right now this Winnipeg Jets team they seem to be bereft of any solutions. So when you're bereft of any solutions, it's incumbent on your best players to take the bull by the horns, as the expression goes. And last night, there was a team of passengers, a team of just people who did not want to be on the ice. It has to change tonight, or the Winnipeg Jets are certainly the struggles and the temperature are going to even get jacked up even higher.
Yeah, the only good news for the Jets, if you want to think about it, is that they've been a good home team and they've got 7 of the next 10 after tonight at home. But I think the only other, if you want to put a positive spin, if you're looking for a glass half full sort of perspective, at least they all stunk yesterday. I mean, it was a collective group. They were the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever did suck, to quote The Simpsons. So, no, there's no question, Drew. I mean, I think it was last Saturday's show when you asked the question to Ezzy and I, or maybe it was one of the post-game shows this week, as to which player needs to step up and be the player to drive this team back. And I said it was Mark Scheifele. And I would reiterate that point that it's Mark Scheifele. It's all Mark Scheifele. I mean, you are on a good, very team favorable contract right now with the Winnipeg Jets, but you want to be a superstar. You want to be a Team Canada player. You want to be known in the same conversation as Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid. Well, you're not right now. You're not even close. And he just doesn't seem right. He doesn't seem fully engaged in the game right now. And for the Jets, it's a problem. I mean, it really is a problem, because if 55 isn't your best player night in and night out, he's your number one center in theory, then you've got a big issue. And the whole point is, I mean, Craig Button, who we love having on the show, talked about the center depth of this Jets team. Scheifele, Dubois, Lowry. Well, I mean, right now that's not showing through, and it's like I said, it's a collective team thing. But Mark Scheifele has to be your best player. So I mean, the spotlight shines brightest on a player like Mark Scheifele. But I think you're like, look, where's Andrew Kopp been? Where's Adam Lowry been? Where's Blake Wheeler been? So I mean, you can't just have Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois kind of pushing this forward, because if they go a little bit cold, well, then this is supposed to be the advantage of this Jets team, is having the depth to sustain if one or two players, lose the heat, if you will. But right now, those players who are supposed to step up when that isn't happening, or, simultaneously while it's happening, having other players perform, it's not happening with this Jets team. And as a result, you're mired in a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah, I agree. And, you mentioned that, it was a complete, failure as a team. And I agree with that, right? Like, and I mentioned I wasn't watching this game live, so it's tough for me to, give as much insight and analysis as you guys. But like, I watched the highlights. I'm sure you talked about, just sticking with Scheifele, like the chance that he had on the power play. I believe that was late in the first period. Like, that was an A+ chance, Dave, like, and an A+ save by Cam Talbot, right? Like the pad save. We've all seen that, whether you were watching it live or, like I said, I had to, catch the highlights on NHL.com. But I mean, so he was getting some chances, on special teams, and I knew that the goals in the first period weren't very good. And then I watched the replays. Like, yeah, those were both point shots, deflections, off Hellebuck's back, off the crossbar. Like, where it starts to really go downhill is on that third goal. Like, I rewatched that third goal 3 or 4 times, and it's just a terrible pass from Andrew Kopp to Nick Ehlers. And Dave talked about that, after the Blue Jackets. Like, it just seems like, the Jets are having trouble, breaking out of their own zone, but putting 2 or 3 really good passes together. And that was obviously the Zuccarello goal that I'm talking about. And the defensive coverage, like, it was kind of a half 3-on-2, but it was really, it wasn't the most dangerous kind of look. And it's just bad defensive coverage. It was Nate Schmidt and Nate Beaulieu out there. And, Nate Schmidt he makes the wrong decision, and Matt Zuccarello is just completely wide open. Like, that's an easy goal. Like, Hellebuck can't do much about that. He makes the first save. Obviously, maybe the rebound, you don't like the fact that it was, that big of a rebound. But like, you look at some of the goals that were scored there in the second period, and, it's just poor defensive coverage. And, you talk about like a disinterest from the Jets, like Ryan Hartman, just watching the highlights, like, he was obviously causing the Jets all types of problems, not to mention, Kirill Kaprizov, who's obviously, a superstar only in his second year in the league. He had a goal and 3 assists, of course, right? So obviously he was the most dangerous wild forward. But, a few of the goals that were scored, it was just Ryan Hartman beating Jets defensemen to the puck.
Just
like,
want.
That's all it was.
It was want and desire. And that is, it's one thing if your want and your desire is there and you're not executing. That happens. You get, you grip the stick too hard, all the cliches, sometimes it just, the bounces don't go your way. The want and desire was not there. That is the real significant problem with last night. It was an effort problem. And you don't say that lightly, because you never want to accuse a professional athlete in any sport of not caring enough or not putting forth the requisite effort to win. But they didn't put forth the requisite effort, never mind to win, just to be competitive. They were not ready to start yesterday's game from the puck drop. And it didn't improve at any point in time during the 60 minutes.
I don't know if I agree with that. I would actually disagree. I actually don't think
they got scored on 55 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, but Drew, it was a tip off of Ehlers' stick. So I'm just saying, like, they actually were. Look, I'm not going to praise the Jets, but they didn't. I actually don't have a problem with the way they started. They were out shooting the Wild. Cam Talbot played an excellent game. I mean, he made some phenomenal saves throughout the course of the 60 minutes. And the reality was, I think the Jets were out shooting them like 9-3 when they scored 2 goals on the first 3 shots, right? So I mean,
goals at
right. So I'm just saying, I think the Jets,
7:47.
right. So I think the Jets had a little bit of the momentum early in the game, but I would suggest that not that it matters. And I think they're a fragile bunch. In that first goal, the inadvertent tip by Ehlers, and then the second goal was that ricochet. I actually don't care about the first period, as weird as that might sound. I actually care more about the way they played in the second period, or didn't play in the second period, to be outshot 21-6, and to be outscored 3-0 in a period you absolutely have to win, in a game against a divisional rival, and probably your closest rival because of all the playoff action and all the, so it's your geographic rival, it's your playoff rival. There's a lot of reasons, and it's your divisional rival. So there's a lot of reasons for you to be up for this game, over and above the fact that you're mired in a losing streak. You should be a surly bunch, and you're down 2-0 after 20 minutes. So to me, it's the way they came out in that second period that's more disconcerting than the way they started the game, because I didn't have a problem with the way they started the game. I had a problem with the fact that they just didn't have anything going. And that's on the players, it's on the coaches, because the coaches need to react and adjust and try and game plan if you see things aren't working. And we talked about it yesterday on the show. The fact that Paul Maurice, I thought he should have called this timeout after the 2-0 goal to kind of reset his team, because again, you're controlling the puck. You have possession for the most part throughout early part, but you've given up 2 goals on 3 shots. Maybe reset your team there. He doesn't. And then they have a disastrous second period. So I think he could have coached better in the first. I think there's a lot of things that the entire collective group, like I said, coaching staff down to the players, could have done better in that second, because to me, that was where this game was lost. 2-0 isn't insurmountable. This isn't the Montreal.
Also, the goals weren't pretty goals. Like they were.
That's right.
Let's be honest, they were garbage goals. And I agree with Dave. Like I want to go back.
Goals is what the Winnipeg Jets need. If you want to call them garbage goals, and you're not wrong, they were ugly and they were off 4 different bodies and deflections here and deflections there. At least Minnesota is getting to the area where they can get a garbage goal or 2. The Jets refuse to go to the hard areas. We've seen that since the second period of Monday's game against Pittsburgh. The Jets, everything has been perimeter. There's been nothing with any traffic in front. That's about want and desire to me. You need to go in there. You need to go and get your body in front of Cam Talbot in yesterday's game. Dave talks about the shots in the first period, and you're not wrong, Dave, but so many of them, including some on the power play, where the guys are to the side of Talbot. They're not, obstructing him. They're not making it difficult on the opposition. That's what the Jets need to get back to doing, is making life difficult for the opposing team. Most of the goalies in the league, if they can see the shot and they can see it cleanly, they're going to save it. I know that, you know that, Ezzy knows that, the Jets players know that, yet they're still refusing to go and get to those areas to make the lives harder.
Yeah, I agree with that, Drew. There's certain players, like look at where Pierre-Luc Dubois has scored all of his goals. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois goes to the net, Jansen Harkins goes to the net, guy like Adam Lowry goes to the net. But you're right, it's 3. You're talking about 3 of 12 or 13 forwards. So you're right. As a collective, they do need to have a little. I think there's a mindset, guys, that needs to change on this Jets team, because I think it's just as many things in life are, I think there's a bit of a mental, whatever you want to call it, mental issue here, psychological issue with the Jets here, that, you go down a couple goals here and then they just know that, the game is over. And, I agree with Dave on what he was saying about the second period. And again, I just went back, while Dave was talking, and I rewatched that 4th goal. Like, The third and fourth goals, the third goal we talked about already, the Zuccarello goal, but the fourth goal, Kirill Kaprizov has a chance. Dominic Toninato, and you guys know, and everybody that listens to the show knows that I really like Toninato, but Ryan Hartman just, pokes the puck away from him. Like Toninato should have just, like he had a clear path to move the puck up the ice, even if it was just getting it off the boards and into the neutral zone. So Hartman picks the puck off. And I forget who had the point shot. It might have been Dmitry Kulikov, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Kulikov.
So it was Kulikov, obviously, saved his best game of the year for the Jets, right, guys? But
by the way, for the record, the Jets were losing to a team with Jordy Ben and Dmitry Kulikov.
Well, all of a sudden, Dmitry Kulikov looked like Nicholas Lidstrom out there. Like, I don't know what he ate for breakfast, or maybe lunch was more appropriate because the game was at 2:30 Central. But you go back and watch that goal, and I just said I did, and the Jets have 3 guys back. And so it's another goal where it's a shot and it's rebound, and you can go back and you can look, and the defensive coverage was just it's not acceptable. Like, again, Scheifele was in the defensive zone, but he's not taking any guy. He's kind of just floating around. And I do think, again, I wasn't watching the game live, so I'm pretty sure that Scheifele was at the end of the shift there. But then you got to make sure that if you're that tired that you're not moving, you got to get off the ice. So that was another goal where that's all defensive coverage, guys. Like, nothing else. That's effort and defensive coverage. Like, when you have 3 guys back, when you have the numbers and you're already down 3-0, you just can't give up that type of goal. So again, Hellebuck gets pulled and Comrie comes in, but I don't think I would blame Hellebuck for any one of those 4 goals. I really wouldn't.
No, I mean, look, sure, Hellebuck doesn't love the fact that the puck bounces off the crossbar and off his elbow and into the net.
100% luck.
Of course it's luck. It's fluke. And when things aren't going your way, that's the kind of goal you give up. That's just sort of how it works in sports, it seems. But, I don't care who was in goal for the Winnipeg Jets last night. I don't care if it was a combination of Dominic Hasek, Marty Brodeur, and Patrick Waugh when they were all at their peaks. It didn't matter. The Jets just, it doesn't matter who's in goal when you play like that. It just doesn't. And that's the part. I mean, you heard Hellebuck's comments, post-game. Talking about how, basically enough is enough, and that today against Calgary, it has to be, a clean slate, and you have to get back to being the team that they were before in all 3 zones when they were certainly competitive, and the times they looked excellent. They have to get back to being that. You heard the fire coming out of Connor Hellebuck. And Paul Stastny. You need to see that fire. You heard the fire coming out of Paul Stastny.
He's not fire, but maybe not fire. But I would call it wisdom.
Sort of the veteran sage of Paul Stastny. You need to see that from everybody on that roster, and it starts tonight in Calgary as the Jets play the on fire Calgary Flames, certainly the top team in the Western Conference right now. To talk about tonight and talk more about yesterday's debacle, we're pleased to welcome back to the program our very good friend from The Athletic, Murat Ates, joins us on the show. Murat, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Oh, good morning. How are you?
We're well. It's a very fired up crowd here this bright and early. We're fired up. The chat room's fired up. I'm sure that some of your Twitter feed and your articles on The Athletic have been fired up as of late. So people are certainly unhappy, let's say, with the performance of the Winnipeg Jets over the past week or so.
Yeah, I see the fire over David's shoulder, and I feel like it is as apt as it could be. For me, it's funny. After the first period yesterday, almost said last night, won't do it. After the first period yesterday, I posted on Twitter to the effect that, you know what? This is not last season's 7-game slump. This is not a team getting just pushed around at 5-on-5. And then the Jets started getting pushed around at 5-on-5. So the place I'm at with this slump right now is that it started with, I know people have all sorts of consternation about the line combinations. Why did Wheeler bump Svechnikov off the top line? All that sort of stuff. But for a long time, for the first few games of the slump, Winnipeg still controlled the flow of play at 5-on-5. And all 3 of its top lines did. So that wasn't something that I was particularly concerned about. They were getting decent chances, not amazing ones. You heard Kyle Connor complain about it 2 nights ago that they weren't quite getting in the middle, but it wasn't catastrophic. Yesterday became that for me. Yesterday, that Kirill Kaprizov, I guess it was kind of a 2-on-1 with Nathan Beaulieu getting beat, and then the Hartman shovel over a Hellebuck's shoulder. Mark Scheifele completely abandoning the net front because the puck was going the other way, and then there's a 2-on-0 in front. He should have been able to see Brendan Dillon in front of him, who was playing a different different coverage. Both of them kind of were not in the right spot, but Scheifele had Dillon in front. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that yesterday was the first time that for me, it wasn't about special teams. It wasn't about finishing. It was about a team that really came off the rails. And that's the concerning thing. That's what they need to really get a hold of in an awful hurry tonight against the Flames.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points there, Murat. And, I don't think anybody watching that game can single out either the power play or the penalty. Actually, the penalty kill was perfect, and they almost lost in that goal because it was a pretty meaningless goal. Was Pierre-Luc Dubois. That was just a first class, short side shot there on Cam Talbot, and he looked like he was going to get the shutout there. But, I wanted to ask you about kind of the mental state of this team, right? Like it seems like, this isn't all just players not executing and a guy like Blake Wheeler or Mark Scheifele struggling. Like it almost seems like this team needs a bit of a mindset reset. And I know that, that's kind of a cliche and it's easier kind of said than done, right? Like, how do you do that? But are you kind of seeing some of that? Like, it seems that, and again, I hate to use this word because it's cliche. Maybe I'm going to become the king of cliches, but, it does seem that this team is really fragile. And when they go down 1 or 2 goals, it looks like, it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to lose the game. What do you kind of make of the psychological, state of this team right now?
Well, I get the sense that it's probably declining, if I could say anything, because yesterday it went off the rails. 2 games ago, pardon me, against Columbus, you sort of had the sense that a comeback wasn't in the cards. I don't think it was quite as awful, but you got the sense they weren't getting to the middle. They weren't creating the sorts of chances that you would think a comeback might happen in. And then what happened, I guess, last weekend, for example, even against Vancouver, they did have waves of offense. You did genuinely believe that they were going to score. They pulled one back, and no, they weren't able to get the second one. So for me, just in terms of how it's looked, it's gotten ever so slightly worse over the last couple of games, and now it's not very good at all. And then to actually think about being in the room talking to the players, and the one that really stands out for me was Winnipeg's last home game when Kyle Connor and Andrew Kopp came out. And, Andrew Kopp started to kind of, walk the line a little bit of, this didn't go great for us, but we're not. And then Kyle Connor said, you know what, this wasn't really acceptable. We didn't get to the middle. We didn't generate enough chances. And Winnipeg hasn't always been a team that's like willing to be as public and front facing with its self-criticism as it might internally. I thought that Kyle Connor sort of stepping up and saying that, like, look, that wasn't good was a little bit notable for that regard. And you're hearing Paul Maurice, quietly, without really a lot of fervor in his voice, also share things like, we gave up a 2-on-0 on that 1 goal last night in front of our own net. That's not acceptable. Like he's pointing to negatives in a way, calmly, I'll say, but in a way that he doesn't typically do. You're getting Paul Stastny. I think that's why he was asked for by local or by media in Minnesota yesterday, because he's been so candid in the past as well. When Winnipeg has cheated the games, so to speak, you have Connor Hellebuck saying, "Look, there's 3 zones. We need to care about every single one of them, starting in our own end." Like, this is a team that's admitting to us in a way that it doesn't always admit to us that it's struggling and doesn't like certain things about itself right now. So yeah, maybe there is a little bit of tension amongst the group right now.
Murat Ates is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Be sure to smash the like button if you haven't already done so. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done that as well. And reminder, later tonight in about 11:45 p.m. Central Time, the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Flames later on tonight.
One of the biggest question marks coming into this season was, how is the defense going to mold together? And this is almost unprecedented in the sense that these guys have had 20 games together, and obviously they've used 11 and 7. So you've had Nate Beaulieu jumping in. But what has been your assessment after we're approaching the quarter mark of the season with these pairings and how they've performed, and what your assessment of them is to this point?
Overall, I've liked it. I really have. And, I said in a couple of places in an article or two, heading into the season that one of the biggest upgrades to Winnipeg's top four defense could be Josh Morrissey, as opposed to Nate Schmidt or Brendan Dillon. And I think that that's largely been the case. You know, it's been an impressive season from him, and I've loved him on the power play when Nate Schmidt's teeing him up for those one-timers. I think the two of them have been able to more or less take on tough competition. They're moving the puck well. You know, Brendan Dillon and Neil Pionk, same thing. I thought Brendan Dillon took a little while to get going. Like I assumed that a player that physical and that mobile would never lose a box out battle, would never find himself out of, you know, a few times he has, you know, he hasn't been perfect. But I think that in the last little while, he's sort of started to get going as well. And the fact is, as a top four, they're handling their competition better. Their metrics look better than Winnipeg has for ages. And I think that that's a real strength. Logan Stanley and Dylan DeMello on that third pair, same deal. I mean, like, these are players who could probably play spot duty higher up in the lineup, you know, depending on the situation. Particularly, we've seen Dylan DeMello do that with Josh Morrissey last year, and it worked largely. So, you know, that's a good spot to be in. I think as a whole, the two takeaways I have are this: they move the puck way better, they get the stops earlier on in the shift, and they have breakout options that they didn't last year as a result. Players are in better positions. They have a couple of different routes. And I think that that's the best thing that you could say. And then you just kind of want them to win a few more of those interior battles and then clear away a few more of those rebounds. But I think that that's a case of a group being good and having something to work on, as opposed to really struggling mightily or anything like that.
Speaking of struggling mightily, that brings us to Mark Scheifele, who is certainly a guy who you're used to being a point-a-game player, is currently a half a point-a-game player so far this season. Sure, the season had a little bit of start and stop to it with the COVID protocol, but Murat, how does Mark Scheifele get going, or is there something deeper here that is you know, more troubling than just a player struggling to find his game?
Well, it's nice because in the lead up to, like, as you're asking that question, I'm kind of thinking, like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Had like a little highlight reel package of goalies robbing him from in close that at least like flashed, including Cam Talbot yesterday on the power play, especially that first power play when, you know, Wheeler got it to the inside for Scheifele in the old school way that we remember from years ago. And, you know, I as long as we can see that, there's offense to come from Mark Scheifele. And I think that, you know, I don't think that his skill has gone anywhere necessarily. I think that some of those goals will come as well. I don't think he's taken over games, though, like he has done in the past at various stages. And then the big thing for me heading into this season for him was, well, hey, maybe this little Olympic motivation is going to turn a player that is sometimes guilty of like thinking offense first, leaving his spot in the defensive zone when the puck's going in the right direction, but maybe not safe yet. You know, that's something that you've seen from Mark Scheifele over the years. And I thought that maybe, knowing that the Olympics were on the horizon, we would get the best 200-foot Mark Scheifele that we've ever seen. And you know what? There were some stretches of it early on. There were some moments, and it reminded me of how he played against Edmonton in the playoffs. But lately, last week or so, you're starting to see that extra long shift creep back into his game. You're starting to see him leave the zone before the puck's in a good spot. And then yesterday, it's a play that I really didn't like. And, you know, maybe I need more angles or more explanation of it. But when he's in front of the net, after he's covered that 2-on-2, he's helped Neil Pionk out. He's got the net front cover. The puck goes towards the blue line. Winnipeg doesn't have possession of it. He's the only one for miles. He has Brendan Dillon in front of him and should be able to see him, but he's looking offense first anyways. And I think it's maybe, you know, I'm not in Mark Scheifele's head. I mean, it could just be a mistake, but I think it's a case of a guy who really does want to put a team on his back and really does want those gaudy offensive totals and maybe comes off of his defensive game in search of that sometimes. So I think really, the goal is that those chances that he does go in and he can sort of stop squeezing the stick or chasing it a little bit.
You know, let me just follow up on something. Do you think there's any lingering ramifications in his game to the Jake Evans hit from last season? Or do you think that sort of that slate has been wiped clean after he served the suspension? Because he just doesn't seem as engaged as we're used to seeing. And I'm wondering if, I don't know, something after he delivered that hit changed in his mindset? I mean, it's probably an impossible question for you to answer. I acknowledge that, but there just seems to be, if I had to, sort of pinpoint something that may have changed between last year and this year, I wonder if that hit might have been a catalyst at all.
There's also COVID too.
Well, sure. Yes, that too, Ezzy.
Yeah, I was going to maybe suggest that, like Ezra, what you said, but I don't know, because mindset wise, physicality, I have no clue. No way to guess.
We need you to be the Jet psychiatrist, Murat. That's what we're asking you to do here.
You know what? Every once in a while, I think I did this last year when Patrick Laine did that press conference where you sort of got the sense that he was going to be traded, where I'll go line by line. I'll be like, this might and it's fun as a game.
Between the lines.
So maybe we need a really good Mark Scheifele interview, and then we'll go. I'll analyze the word choice. I'm not right, but I don't know. I mean, he seemed to say I didn't like this joke either, but he was trying to be funny, and that's innocent. He said he'd come back stronger from COVID, or COVID makes you stronger, because he had a really good first game back. But he hasn't really been as excellent since that time, I don't think. Is there anything there? Again, I can't know. And you know what? He hasn't said any. So like he knows his body. He knows how he's feeling, and we don't. The one thing about the Jake Evans situation, let me compare it to Leon Draisaitl. Do you remember after the playoffs last year when Nathan McKinnon was Colorado? We needed to be better, and Leon Draisaitl was, we played better than Winnipeg, no issues. And you kind of thought to yourself, I thought to myself, like, okay, I mean, at least say out loud that you didn't win. You didn't win a single game. Like, you may like the process, and that's one thing, but you can be better if you didn't win a single game, I think. And so, when Mark Scheifele said that, like, the Department of Player Safety tried to shut him down, he's, again, trying to be funny. Honestly, that's what it is. It's not like some malicious place, but I think he's trying to be funny. He talks a lot about how all this stuff just makes a person stronger. We've heard him say that a few times this year. I don't get the sense of somebody for whom that play is weighing so heavily that his game would change. And that's pure. I could be so wrong, right? But I've not gotten that sense. I think he still internally believes he did the right thing, but now he's going through a challenge as a result of that. So I don't know. This is me thinking out loud and sort of making up some of these thoughts as I go, like just trying to interpret. And that's never really that safe, but it's what I think at this 9:33 a.m. today.
That's what we do all the time. We've been doing that for 12 years.
It's almost 13 years that we've just been thinking out loud, Murat. So we have no problem with you doing that either. But just sticking with Scheifele, I've got a non-Scheifele question before you. But I can probably say this because I've been pretty vocal over the years about my battle with depression. But if the Jets are struggling and they need an antidepressant, maybe David Gustafsson is the antidepressant for the Jets right now, right? Obviously, I'm joking right now. A lot of people want Gustafsson
tongue in cheek.
Yeah, obviously I'm being tongue in cheek, but I wanted to ask you about some of the good articles that you've been writing. We should mention The Athletic has a great promotion right now. I believe that it ends this weekend, Murat, but I might be wrong, but it's $1 a month. So if you're not already a subscriber of The Athletic, head to theathletic.com. Obviously, we're all subscribers and we're big fans of Murat, and we've been having him on the show now for many years. The question I wanted to ask you, though, was about those articles. And let's get away from the present Jets, because as you mentioned in your lead, I mean, it's pretty ugly right now with the 5-game losing streak. But I wanted to ask you what kind of stood out to you about the two articles that you've written projecting the 2024-2025 roster, and then just looking at Cole Perfetti and Chaz Lucius, because obviously, Perfetti is closer to making the jump to the NHL than Lucius. He might end up playing a couple of years at the University of Minnesota. But what kind of has stood out to you, big picture, looking at the roster, 2 or 3 years down the road?
Well, two things come to mind immediately, and thanks for mentioning the sale as well. You're right, it ends at the end of Monday, $1 a month. But two things stood out, because as recently as the moment before Cole Perfetti slid to the Jets at 10th overall, there were huge question marks about the Jets prospect pool. I mean, they traded first-round picks away a couple of times. They traded Eric Foley, a great prospect. He ended up getting hurt, so we're not hearing about how he's taking over the league or anything, but he's been playing well. They traded fourth-round picks, fifth-round picks, all in the name of some of their playoff runs. And it was no longer a case where under the surface you have Kyle Connor, Jack Roslovic, Nick Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Pat, all that sort of stuff. There was a question for me, and especially because they didn't have a ton of picks in these last couple of drafts. There was some concern. But then Cole Perfetti drops. Chaz Lucius drops. And these are very good players, like consensus top 5 for Perfetti, top 10 for Lucius. They both think the game at such a high level. And suddenly you can point to, it's not the best prospect group in the NHL, but it has some clear strengths. And one of those strengths is, they have some forwards who can really, really think the game offensively. Like Cole Perfetti at the AHL level already, those passes he makes are incisive. The reads he makes they pick defenses apart, and you like that. Chaz Lucius was described to me once as the off the puck version of Cole Perfetti, in that he's just as smart. He reads defenses just as well, but he doesn't have the puck. He goes to a dangerous spot. He gets the puck. He scores, and he's a scorer of all kinds. And so we've been looking at trying to project the future. That's 2 keys on forward. David Gustafsson, another one. I mean, you guys are all over the Manitoba Moose. I mean, what does he not do, right? Like, he's nearly a point per game. First power play, first PK, plays the 4-on-4, gets double shifts at times. I mean, I saw Manitoba play 11-7 last weekend, and so you needed that a little bit. You start to look for spots that these guys are going to occupy in the roster. And I think that the future is good. You can integrate these guys. Cole Perfetti, probably it could be as soon as next year. I think I'm not beyond there being a call up this season. It could happen, but I think that next year as well. David Gustafsson for that PK Ezra. I mean, like, absolutely. There's time for him now. I think that based on the role he gets, and he's probably, like, I can't see in their actions him coming to the Jets right away, because they give him such a big role in Manitoba, and at training camp he was playing on the 6th, 7th, 8th line. He wasn't really mixing, with those NHL guys. So that's kind of just another interpretation. But the other thing, imagine, I said there were 2 things, and that was one. That was quite the fun one. I got all these subheadings in my brain. It's too nerdy about. Anyway, so the other thing is that clearly there's a logjam on defense, right? I mean, Nathan Beaulieu is an unrestricted free agent next summer. Other than that, the top 6 of the Winnipeg Jets is the top 6 for the foreseeable future. And on a team that's looking to break in Ville Heinola, Dylan Samberg when he gets his legs back under him after this start, Johnny Kovacevic, I mean, as a right shot, big, smart, mobile defenseman, I could easily see him having, a Tucker Poolman-esque NHL career, a little bit late arrival, a smart player who everybody really enjoys as well. Declan Chisholm is scoring, moving the puck, skating really well. Leon Gavanka puts up big point totals. And I'm not saying all of these guys are going to make it by any stretch. Like, it doesn't tend to work out that way. But Winnipeg tends to integrate maybe one new defenseman a year. Logan Stanley has that mantle right now. So they have a huge challenge in front of them, knowing when to move on from which veteran, if it happens, how to integrate Ville Heinola when it just doesn't make sense for him to be in the AHL anymore, where to find those spots. And it's not that big of a defense outside of Logan Stanley and Brent Dillon either. So, that plays into it. So you wonder if in the next couple of years, we're either going to see a veteran trade out, to a team that could use that when one of Winnipeg's prospects is so good. Or, and I don't see this as likely, but it would so-called fix a lot of problems, some of Winnipeg's top prospects on defense for a real, like, a young, better established top 4 NHL defenseman as well, begins to kind of be an option for a team that has, a lot of defensive strength. And maybe some of the forwards could be a question as Andrew Kopp reaches free agency, Paul Stastny, et cetera, as well.
No, Murat, I could spend all day talking about the Manitoba Moose and the Jets.
Put on the antlers, Dave. Put on the antlers.
I don't even know where they are. They're not around me. I didn't think we were doing a Minuk Moose Minute right now, so there's no antlers right now. But
tonight, post-game show,
we'll
there'll be a
Minuk
Minuk
later
Moose
tonight.
Minute.
No, so we could talk about them all day. But was there anybody in particular that kind of jumped out at you because obviously, like you said, you're at the Moose game, and you've got all of these young. Like, it's funny because the prospect system with the forwards, as you just cleanly put out there, isn't as deep as their defensive depth. And even some of the forwards that are there aren't at the pro level, right? Like you said, you got Nathan Smith leading the NCAA in scoring, or at least he was last I checked, and you've got Chaz Lucius. You've got some of those guys away. But which of the defensemen really kind of jumped out at you from guys that, like you said, you don't see on a regular basis and made an impression in the game that you came to see? Small sample size.
Yeah, we'll admit the small sample size. I was so impressed by all of them. It seemed like Ville Heinola, every time, every play, the puck went through him. He has this like sense, the cliche I grew up with was, the puck follows him around. Well, with Ville Heinola, it really did. And in the game I saw, I'll be honest, I mean, there were a couple of puck hand grenade moments, which I sort of forgive. It was his third game in 4 days, and the puck is always on his stick, and he's doing great things with it most of the time. But the sheer amount of plays that went through him really stood out to me. And I'll, in a sentence, Mark Morrison, the coach, stood out to me because I liked the way that Winnipeg's defenseman jumped up in the offensive zone. Let's call it Eric Dubois as well, defensive coach, and had coverage from forwards. There were plans. It wasn't defenseman sees something, chases it. You could tell there was a lot of structure to it, and they believed in all of the players, including youngsters like that offense first pairing of Gavanka and Chisholm as well. I really liked a lot of what I saw from Manitoba's defenseman that day.
Murat, we'll let you go on this last question. Yesterday, the Jets went 11-7 in Minnesota or in St. Paul, which I think a lot of people found to be a curious decision. They play in Calgary later tonight. Do you think that 11-7 continues? Do you think we see one of Vesalainen or Riley Nash back in the lineup? What do you think Paul Maurice does with his players and maybe even the forward lines coming off of what was undoubtedly a debacle yesterday in St. Paul?
My guess is that the motivation for 11-7 was the idea that Minnesota would be so physical. And then you bring Nathan Beaulieu in because that's one of his strengths, right? He hits, he blocks shots, he plays on the penalty kill as well. Although I didn't love the penalty that anyway, that his strengths feed to that. And I don't know if I feel that Calgary is there to the same degree. And certainly Winnipeg kind of got burned by its decision yesterday, or at least they made a decision and got burned. Maybe it wasn't the reason. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that they definitely go 11-7 unless there's some nagging injuries to Vesalainen or Nash or what have you. That said, Paul Maurice was asked about the decision after the game last night, and he said, you know what, the forwards didn't play ridiculous minutes. If you go down and look at line by line how many minutes that they played, it wasn't as bad as you might think on first glance. So one of the things I meant to do was actually check it minute by minute. If they played a reasonable time and there was no line well above 20 or what have you,
there wasn't.
No? There was? Okay, so then maybe this is the plan.
Kyle Connor led all forwards at 20 minutes and 17 seconds. Then it was Blake Wheeler was next at 18:23. Now, part of that is probably, to your point, game flow, because you can roll as many lines as you want when you're down 7-1 because it don't matter at that point.
Well said. But I mean, if you come out of it like that, you might imagine, just like Connor Hellebuck's workload wasn't that much because they pulled him. You might think that those forwards shouldn't be exhausted, and if they're willing to gamble on that when Paul Stastny is just returning from injury, then what about now if he feels good again? So, gosh, I didn't originally think that would 11-7 we'd be seeing that, and then to hear those numbers, to think about it, to think back on what Paul Maurice said last night. My guess, actually, without having seen morning, I guess they won't do it on a back-to-back. My guess is maybe they go right back to it. It's tough. It's tough because it didn't go well. But they, at least in minutes wise, you could sort of see their perspective on it if they like it.
Well, we'll find out more in about 11 hours' time when the Jets and the Calgary Flames do battle later on this evening. Murat Ates covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. Murat, always appreciate your time. Always appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ezra. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you again real soon. There he goes, Murat Ates of The Athletic. Let's take our first break. When we come back, more on tonight's game against the Flames, and we'll be joined by Kristen Anderson, who covers Calgary for Post Media. Stick and stay, as our friend Hustler says. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you, but why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve sandwich.
The Illegal Curve sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We are back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast edition of the show. Leave comments on YouTube. Leave comments on the podcast. And be sure to join us back here later on tonight, probably in about 14 hours time. I was wishful thinking there for a second. 14 hours time from now for about 11:45 tonight, Illegal Curve After Dark, where we talk about the Jets and the Calgary Flames.
Are you also going to be sipping on some bourbon? Like, that's kind of what when you say Illegal Curve After Dark, that's, I imagine like you're going to have like the velvet robe. You're going to have the pipe with tobacco in it. You're going to have the bourbon.
I'm going to have the bourbon. I won't have a robe on because nobody wants that. And I don't have a pipe because I'm not an 1870s prospector.
You're not from the movie No Country for Old Men? There Will Be Blood. That was the one I was thinking of.
There Will Be Blood. Yeah, no, I'm not from that movie. So I won't have that, but I will.
So you're not going to drink my milkshake, Drew?
I'm not going to drink. I don't even know what that means, but I don't want to think about your milkshake, and I don't think it brought all the boys to the yard either there, Mr. Ginsburg. But I will probably have a bourbon with me when we're doing the post-game show later on tonight. After all, it is the big Kentucky-Louisville Governor's Cup football game tonight that I'll be keeping a close eye on before the Jets and the Flames begin.
Go Kentucky.
There you go. Go Kentucky. Speaking of the Calgary Flames and the Jets obviously looking to bounce back, have a difficult matchup against the Western Conference leading a tremendous Calgary Flames team that we'll talk more about throughout the show. But let me ask you guys this. I asked Murat about 11-7. He thought that it's a possibility the Jets go back to it. Do you expect to see it continue again tonight? Do you expect to see a reversal to 12-6? What were your thoughts in general about the 11-7 usage in last night's contest? Dave, I'll start with you because you watched the entirety of the game, and then Ezzy, I'll let you in on that one as well.
Well, I mean, obviously it was fantastic. What was the final score? 7-1? I mean, it was clearly that was a great decision, and I thought it was curious. I thought it was curious because I thought Paul Stastny hasn't played in 20 days. and he was out with that lower body injury, the foot injury that he took from that Neil Pionk shot against the Islanders, I think, on November 6th. And so, and Paul Stastny's 36. He's in good shape, but he's still 36 years old. And I know that they wanted to get him back in the lineup, and you kind of want to let him dip his toe in the water before you just cannonball him in there. But I mean, to me, that was a little bit of a curious decision, because I thought you'd have an opportunity if you went with 12 and 6 to kind of give him reduced minutes, reduces the wear and tear on him. And instead they go 11 and 7. And I thought, okay. And what Murat pointed out is right. You thought there was going to be a physical element to this game that maybe, and a lot of penalties in the game that maybe they wanted Nate Beaulieu to help out. But like I said, I didn't, it's hard. You can't malign Christian Vesalainen and what he's done, because kid gets 5 minutes a game. So, I mean, he's not really doing much because he's not given much. And when he's on the ice, he seems generally in the first and second periods, at least in the last little stretch, he's been fine given his role, his limited role. Riley Nash, I don't know what he's doing really, much of anything really for the Jets. So, him coming out, but of course the Jets have a salary cap issue, so they don't have a lot of flexibility. They don't have room really. But as I said on yesterday's show, like realistically, if you're putting any of these guys on waiver, are you worried about losing them? Like, is anybody really going to claim any of these players? If you wanted to give David Gustafsson a shot and you didn't want to, you didn't want to send, or I mean, realistically, the Jets will send Vesalainen down because he's waiver exempt. So they'll just send him down and they'll just bring up someone. And as you've said, Drew, the Jets weren't going to do something like, I didn't think they were going to bring Gustafsson up anyways. Unless there's a desperate need, and look, unless they lose, if they get pumped again tonight, then maybe you see it. But no, I just don't. Again, I am more inclined to believe injury is what gets David Gustafsson up to the Jets, not a recall because of a lineup issue. Despite that, I think, and again, I just want to pump the brakes. Again, I'm the driver of the Gus bus, but I want to make sure the brakes are still working on the Gus bus, because I don't want it to go over a cliff. David Gustafsson. You're
not the driver of the Gus bus. You are the creator of the Gus bus. You're like Prevost, if you know that company.
Well,
Prevost.
I would think you would have gone with a more local one, but
bus manufacturer. They're owned by Volvo.
Oh wow! Someone's showing the Swedish
my dad's partner negotiates contracts for them, so that's how I know.
Okay, I was gonna say New Flyer. That would be local, not some exotic Swedish bus manufacturing.
Shout out to Debbie. She used to work for Motor Coach Industries, which is a Manitoba company.
MCI would have been a better or more relevant.
She moved on to Prevost. Their Canadian headquarters are Quebec City. But go ahead, Dave.
Anyways, all I was going to say is, like, I just want people to be aware that, like, David Gustafsson isn't going to come here and solve all the Jets' issues. He's a very capable player. I think he is, and Murat talked about it. Like, he does everything for the Moose, 5-on-5 PK power play. So the reality for David, I just want it to be like, let's be realistic. He's not going to come in and solve all the Jets' issues. He'll help, and there's no question. Like, he is responsible, and I think after playing 26 games in the NHL with Winnipeg, now having spent time, obviously in the Swedish league, in the second tier league there in Sweden, when, during COVID, and now with the Moose last season and this season, and being the guy in Manitoba, I think he's definitely capable of getting it. But anyways, like I said, I could be wrong. I don't see it unless there's, some sort of injury, or again, like I said, they suffer some sort of catastrophic defeat tonight against the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, but hold on, let's back it up. Dave is definitely entitled to his opinion, and he's probably right. Like, is 7-1 not a catastrophic defeat? Like, is a 5-game losing streak not reason enough to call him up? And I realize they're on the road right now, Dave, as opposed to the Jets, the Moose, who are at home. So obviously, and the second game of a back-to-back. So obviously, David Gustafsson is not going to be called up. But what I said after the Columbus game was that I thought it was time for David Gustafsson, and you could argue that he deserved to call up 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And obviously, this is just my own personal opinion, but I think the Jets could definitely use a bit of a change. And I've said this before, like an infusion of some young blood. Like, the power play and the penalty kill are both struggling. The Jets are struggling overall. Like, the 5-on-5 play has probably been the least of their concerns, but obviously yesterday it was. So, like, why are you continuing with the same group here? Obviously, the Paul Stastny injury factors in, right? Like, you don't want to bring in Gustafsson and Stastny at the same time, because Stastny's been out for a while and you're trying to get him, going. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if, regardless of what happens in this Jets Flames game tonight, that Gustafsson is called up, because he deserves it. Like, I really believe in Merritt. And, Dave, you mentioned this, like, his game better than anybody, but is he not NHL ready right now? And I realize that, the Jets management and coaching staff, their plans for development factor in here. I'm just going to say that much. Like, I think, it could be time now, whether that's tomorrow or a week from now. And as far as the 11-7 goes, Drew, I think Murat nailed it. Like, you're expecting a much more physical game against Minnesota, which it wasn't, because they were too busy scoring goals. So, I mean, the only reason I would say that if the Jets do go 12-6, it would be because you're getting some fresh legs, right? Second game of a back-to-back. And, if I had to guess, it would probably be Riley Nash that goes in.
I mean, I think the only reason I think you would say that, and I tend to agree with you, is that because Paul Maurice always will defer to a veteran player over a young player. I just didn't understand the logic behind 11-7 for yesterday's game. And I know physical play and everything else, but I mean, are the Wild that physical? Are they running around like the 1970s Broad Street Bullies all of a sudden? I mean, this is a team that's that's got a lot of talent. I mean, Kirill Kaprizov is not running around throwing his weight around. Dmitry Kulikov is not running around throwing his weight around like a goon. I just didn't understand 11-7 from the get-go, and I think it discombobulated the team, a team that's fragile to begin with. And all of a sudden, you're throwing a seventh defenseman there. The forward lines are getting constantly realigned, shift after shift, almost. I said it on the post game. I thought this was a coach overthinking the situation. I thought this was a coach, who was almost not bereft of answers, but was looking for something that wasn't there. And if you do it again, I really don't know why you're going to get any bit of an improvement, based on from what you saw yesterday. Go back to 12-6. I think today is the game where you realign your forward lines completely. You have nothing that you can grab onto that was beneficial from yesterday's game. There's nothing there that you can say, oh yeah, that line did well and we can build on it. I think what you need to do as a coaching staff is you need to say, who are the 12 forwards I want in my lineup? Because you're healthy. As far as we know, everybody came out of yesterday's game healthy. So, you got your 12 forwards, you pick the 12 forwards you want, you divide them up into 4 lines and say, these are the 4 lines with this alignment that allows us to going to perform at its best and gives us the best chance to win. And that's the 12 guys you go with tonight. Because you need a win, and more so than needing a win is you need to play a damn good hockey game. So if they play a great hockey game and they end up losing because Jacob Markstrom is the best goaltender in the league right now, then so be it. It's not great, but if if it's a hard-fought defeat like it was against the Oilers, that started this losing streak, everyone will say, okay, fine, you're coming out of it. But if it's anything similar to what we saw yesterday, it's just going to continue this debacle. And then you have to play Arizona on Monday. And sure, you expect to beat Arizona, but if the Jets
beat Arizona,
well, no. I mean, if they played like they played against Minnesota, you're not going to beat anybody. So I think today
I'll still beat Arizona.
I think tonight is the game where you don't overthink it. You pick your best 12 forwards, you align them, you pick your best 6 defensemen, you align them, and you say, go show me what you got. You don't start, playing around with 11-7 to insert, of all players, and no disrespect intended, Nate Beaulieu into lineup. It's just not worth, I think, the additional damage or additional questions that it might lead to.
Well, if you're going to do that, though, I mean, obviously you want your 4th line playing a significant amount of minutes, and they did yesterday for obvious reasons, right?
Well, but they didn't really have a 4th line. To your point, yes.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
What you're saying.
And, Dominic Toninato played quite a bit on the penalty kill. I think he was around, I don't know what it was, but it was 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes or something like that. Yeah, so it's not that complicated. Riley Nash mostly goes in. Obviously, the only other option is Christian Vesalainen, and Beaulieu comes out. And I didn't think he played particularly well, at least on the highlights I watched. I should mention, guys, I don't want to, be misleading here. I didn't watch any of the game live because I was working and with my kids there. Yeah. Well, for people that maybe weren't listening earlier, Drew, just wanted to get that in there. But maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe Beaulieu did some good things, and I'm not picking on him. If he played really well, if he was like one of the Jets' best defensemen in that loss to Minnesota, then I understand. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can beat a dead horse even more here, guys. Like, it's pretty simple. Most likely the Jets should go back to 12-6. Let's move on.
Okay, Dave. So who are your 12 forwards then? I mean, never mind. No, sorry. I mean, don't answer who are your 12 forwards. How are you aligning those 12 forwards? Because a lot of people are saying, rightfully so, that the Jets' decline in success occurred when Svechnikov and Wheeler were switched around. That was the decline in the team's success.
You can't simplify it down to that, but okay.
I think I agree with you, Ezzy, that you can't simplify it that much. But that is, certainly a catalyst, or that was for a lot of people, they're pointing to that as a turning point. So would you maybe reunite them to see if you can hook them all up to the rejuvenation machine?
I would just I think I've been pretty vocal at what I do. I would just keep Kopp, Scheifele, and Ehlers together. I would go Svechnikov, Dubois, and Connor together. I would keep Lowry with Stastny and Wheeler, and I would go Harkins, Nash, and Tony Nato, only because you could play Harkins at center. The Jets never do. So while it's pie in the sky, he's not going to play center because they've been putting him on the wing. So they've played Vesely in 4 minutes. So realistically, I'm trying to project who I know the Jets would put in the lineup and then configure them accordingly. I'm not saying who I would necessarily, those aren't my 12 necessarily, but given the fact that Paul Maurice is going to throw Nash, 12 to expect. So that's what I would do. That's the way I would do it. I would just do like I said, I think Lowry, Stastny, and Wheeler could be an incredibly effective third line. And I think it gives Paul Maurice the option to, if you can't get one of those lines going, that's 3 lines that have balance, that have scoring, that have the opportunity to put the puck into the back of the net. And even that 4th line is going to work their ass off and realistically can maybe chip in, but they should be a relatively even line.
There's our buddy Frank is suggesting why not go up the middle, as we've talked about for since the trade. Scheifele, Dubois, Lowry, Stastny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not adverse to that, but I just think that, I'm not so sure that would end up happening. So I do like that configuration as I've put forth. But I mean, look, I'm never going to say no to Paul Stastny as a center.
I just want to throw. Oh, sorry, we got Kristen here. I was going to make one of my best points of all time, but obviously we got Kristen on here, so I'm not going to be able to make it. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, Kristen. Kristen Anderson covers the Calgary Flames for Post Media. She joins us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show now, talking about the Jets and the Flames later on tonight. Kristen, good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, it's been a while, but so happy to be back. I was on maternity leave for a year. Perfect year from a Flames perspective to be away from the team, because last year was such a gong show. But yeah, it's awesome to be back.
And you come back, and you're all.
It's awesome to have you back.
It's awesome to have you back for sure. And all of a sudden, you come back to the beat, and the Flames are the best team in the Western Conference.
Okay, but I will say this: the last time that they were dominant, super dominant, was 2018-19, and I was also pregnant that year. And I had my baby in 2019, so January. And then I was like, okay, they're amazing. I could probably come back early, to cover playoffs, because there's lots of opportunities with broadcasting and things when a team is doing really good and is really successful. And then they were out in 10 days. The playoff run lasted 10 days. They were out in the first round against the Colorado Avalanche. So it was okay, now I have this 10-week-old baby. I'm oh, but no, we were talking, and they've obviously been the talk of everybody's talking about them, but they're dominant in every way. Whereas 2018-19 felt like there was another shoe that was going to drop. It almost felt like it was fake. But this year, just the way that they're winning, it's. I mean, they're looking like a playoff team right now. That being said, they haven't faced any adversity. The schedule is still super long. There's that Olympic break. They have no injuries. They've had no injuries. You look at the Jets, 5 straight losses. It's been pretty tough right now. What happens now is what I'm saying. You have to just give it some time here, because there's there's 82 games. That's why they play them. So
Exactly. So we can put the parade route back in a drawer. The fans in Calgary can, at least so far. But you mentioned the dominance, and I mean, you look at the goal for goals against differential. It's tremendous. It's plus 30, 68 goals for, which puts them towards the top of the Western Conference, and then 38 goals against, which is such a unfathomably low number. Look.
It's insane. The last time that they've had that low goals against was when Sutter was the head coach. And that was in the clutching and grabbing years. That, or I should say, sorry, that was after the lockout. It was the 2005-2006 season. But it's been a long time since this team has been, that stingy. But
where's it coming from, though? I mean, people talked about Calgary in the preseason as a team that's probably a tweener in the Pacific Division. Maybe they can be a playoff team, but nobody really thought that they were going to be, a team to really worry about in terms of Stanley Cup aspirations. Where is the success coming from? I mean, we knew that, we knew about the goaltending. We knew, there's a quality goaltender there in Jacob Markstrom, but everything else has just been so tremendous as well.
Yeah. It's, you have to look at, love him or hate him. He has a obviously complicated relationship with the media in over the years that he's coached, Daryl Sutter. It's the way he's coaching, and so it's the system that he's implemented in the Flames. We've seen this before. We've seen this when he was with the LA Kings. He was able to step away from the game and look at it on an objective level, and he was able to watch the Flames a lot because he was with the Anaheim Ducks as a coaching advisor. They're a stifling team. It is so boring and it's so frustrating probably to play. They keep teams to the outside, speed through the neutral zone, obviously. But they have this checking philosophy. And Daryl Sutter got super mad at me the other day because I was asking about how, their team defense is so strong, but he was like, it's not team defense, it's checking. Everybody wants to call it team defense, but it's checking. It's moving the puck forward as fast as they can to the forwards. And then, keeping things to the outside, limiting their scoring chances against. And it just frustrates teams so much that they just play into their favor, because it just, they can't get anything through their system. So it's a committee effort. You hear that all the time, but you watch everybody's individual performances. Johnny Gaudreau, I've never seen him be such a good two-way player. And that's not even been a conversation. You can't even put those two words in the same sentence, Johnny Gaudreau and two-way, because it's just been he's just so offensively minded. But this year it's just so different. There's obviously Jacob Markstrom playing the way he is. He's an elite goaltender, and he'll definitely start for his team Sweden, I think in February. But it's you look at how did this happen? And once, it's like anything in life, you start to see things succeed, and then you believe in it. It's like the team, the players are seeing the results. So yeah, of course, why wouldn't they believe in Daryl Sutter's system? Now that voice gets old, but right now it's certainly working.
Now, Kristen, you mentioned individual performances, and you mentioned the Olympics in February, and I think the two tie in here. We have to ask you about Andrew Mangiapane, right? 15 goals, 2 assists, so he's obviously the favorite for the NHL's version of the Cy Young Award. But I mean, in all honesty, he has been just incredible, as this year, and he was good, in previous years for the Flames. Some people he might be a bit of a dark horse, but some people have, picked him to be on Team Canada for the Olympics. And obviously he was, as soon as he joined Team Canada at the World Hockey Championship, I mean, he was a force out there and a big reason why they won the gold medal, right? Is this just a player that, his confidence is just at an all-time high, and he's carrying, what he did in Europe at the World Hockey Championships into this year? What have you seen that's different? Because it seems like, everything, he touches turns to gold.
Yeah, he's such an interesting player. Everybody loves the underdog story. He was a 6th round pick, I think, and undrafted. you know, he's small, like he's a smallish player. Like he's not dynamic like Johnny Gaudreau is. Like Johnny Gaudreau is small and dynamic, but sorry, I just have to get my dog here.
No, we need to see the dog. If the dog is barking, we want to see the dog on the show.
This is also a there she is.
Oh, there we go. Boxer.
Yeah, boxer.
What's your dog's name, Kristen?
Maggie.
Oh, she's cute.
She's yeah, it's pretty funny. They're like such a tough dog, but she's such a wuss. Like they look like such a tough dog. They get a bully breed the moniker, like they're the bully breed, but she's actually just a big wuss. But anyway, Andrew Mangiapane, like he's just been quietly, I think, just working on his game and getting used to the NHL, and he works so hard during a game. Like he works hard to get the puck. He works hard to get the puck back. And he's he's playing on a good line, but yeah, I think this year you're just seeing a culmination of everything like he sort of worked for. The World Championships was definitely a confidence booster. He is on the long list of Team Canada, but he has 15 goals. It's crazy. Like I don't think maybe and obviously we'll see if that evens out a little bit. That's kind of an unsustainable pace, perhaps. But you never know. It's like I would think that he's shooting up the depth chart. But look at the Canadian team roster. That's like where is he going to play? Who's he going to bump? Like it's but injuries, performance, you just never know. So it's been an interesting story to follow. He's been a really good prospect. And the other thing too, like when you develop a player in a franchise, it kind of speaks to the volumes of their system, which hasn't historically been a great like breeding ground of offensive stars. So it's kind of nice to see. He is a good story for sure. His name is Mangiapane, and he's Italian. I don't know if your listeners or you guys know, but it means eat, like literally translated, it means eat bread. So the other like for a game the other day, somebody threw a loaf of bread on the ice. So it's actually like he's becoming a little bit of a cult hero in Calgary, which is kind of fun.
Kristen Anderson is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. The Jets and the Flames later on tonight, a 9 o'clock Central Time puck drop. Come back here after the game around 11:45 p.m. for the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Flames.
You know, Kristen, Drew started the interview off talking about Jacob Markstrom, and he mentioned it, but how can you not talk about him in depth given what he's done? He's already got as many shutouts in 15 games with the Flames this year as he had in I think the previous 2 seasons, which was about 86 games combined. So his run is phenomenal. And then not only do you have Markstrom playing great hockey for Calgary, you got Dan Vlader. It seems he's got 4 wins on the season. So you've got not only a phenomenal starter, but you got a phenomenal backup, and that's just giving Calgary such an impressive 1-2 punch, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think it was really tough to find the right fit this summer for Jordan Siegelet. He's the director of goaltending for the Calgary Flames. It was really hard to find the right fit, somebody who would be totally okay with Jacob Markstrom taking the spotlight. And knowing Daryl Sutter's history with goaltenders and like how much he likes to run the hot hand and have like a true number one guy. It's I think it was really difficult. And then you look at Dan Vladar and you look at kind of the way that the Boston Bruins have developed him. Like he just his nature, he is just willing to learn. He sees, young players all say that, but I think like it takes a special, pretty like it's a smart, obviously a smart player to look and be like, I have this guy who is unbelievable and is such a pro. He can learn so much from him, and he's really taken that opportunity and ran with it. I think his attitude really helps with that. So he's good. Like he's big. He's really athletic. He can get into position really easily. And he doesn't get too rattled. I think you saw while it was so great to have David Riddick, who was such a passionate, he was their number 2 a couple years ago. He was so passionate, but he'd often get in his head a little bit too much. You could see that because he would be very busy in net. Dan Vladar is pretty calm. Jacob Markstrom is like incredibly calm. Like he's like kind of an alien, it feels like some days. I think, you saw that in Vancouver with Jacob Markstrom. Everybody knew what level of goaltender he was, the caliber of netminder he was. But this year, I think in Daryl Sutter's system, everything is sort of looking good right now for Jacob Markstrom. But he's also in the zone. Yeah, 5 shutouts, like junior numbers, is like ridiculous, right? Like 5 shutouts in the NHL. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. Like which is why tonight's game against the Jets is so interesting, because the Jets have struggled to score and the Flames have won 4 in a row, but they're also like due for a loss. So tonight, and like the Jets will, I'm sure, get up for obviously they'll get up for tonight's game because it's Calgary, and I think there's a bit of still a bit of rivalry there. I believe. It's like, yeah, to me, it's kind of an interesting game on so many levels. I think I know being covering the opposite side, like your guys' side, when the Jets are losing, when a team is losing, it's kind of like, a little bit grinding, but it's going to be an interesting game for me.
Kristen, there's so many, people lighting it up offensively for the Calgary Flames. But I want to talk about a guy whose contributions might be more in the dressing room and less on the score sheet. And that's, of course, Blake Coleman, who came over from the Tampa Bay Lightning, 2-time back-to-back Stanley Cup winner in Tampa Bay, has such great success. He comes into Calgary. What impact, what influences he had on the Flames, particularly, let's say, in the dressing room?
Yeah, I mean, you look at his last 2 years with the Tampa Bay Lightning, like 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups, some amazing experience. He was on a really important role, like line, identity line. He played an important role for the Lightning during that time. Knows what it takes to win. Knows that the grind of the season, like what's at the end of it all. How do you get there? I think that, his leadership, and I think he's a real glue guy. The Flames actually have quite a few of those, and like, it's such a stupid term, and like everybody uses it, or it's an overused term all the time, like a glue guy. But you have these older players that know, well, he's not that old, but you have all these players like Milan Lucic and Trevor Lewis and Brad Richardson and Blake Coleman and Eric Goodbranson, who've been around the league for a long time. And when you have a young core and a young group of players, like you look at that 2019 playoff series, even the playoff series in the bubble against the Dallas Stars, like you just need that calming influence on the bench, and like basically guys to pump other guys' tires. And I think that's what Blake Coleman has provided. They've had a little bit of offense from him, which has been, I think, nice. They probably need a little bit more. I think down the stretch, you need a little bit more well-rounded. You can't just be like a one-headed monster like they are. I mean, their first line has been great, and then Andrew Mangiapane on top of that. So it's his voice is valuable. He's a big team guy. They had a big U.S. Thanksgiving party at the Coleman's house. So, you have those types of things, and I think you maybe won't see his impact on the score sheet all the time, but it's there for sure.
Do you know if there's any leftover stuffing, by the way, from that Coleman Thanksgiving? Because I'll fly to Calgary if I need to. I'll check WestJet.com right now, Kristen.
Blake Wheeler should probably have had something. Well, they were on the road, of course, during.
As we're doing Thanksgiving at our house tonight, if you come by the back door, I'll shovel some out to you, but you won't be allowed in the house.
I'll take it. I'll take whatever I could get here. Kristen, just last question for you here. I really like the article that you had. I think it was either yesterday or a couple of days ago. it was in the last couple of days about reasons to be optimistic and 5 reasons to be optimistic, 5 reasons to be skeptical about the Flames. And I think the timing is so right for that article, right? Because we just talked about American Thanksgiving, and everybody kind of looks at that as a barometer, right? Like, how are you doing after kind of that 20 game mark? And the point to me that maybe was the most, maybe that hit home the closest was, can these stars produce when it matters, was the subheading. And that seems to always be, the criticism. And also in the article, you talk about how the Flames haven't faced adversity, and a team always has to face adversity, right, on the way to a long playoff run. So even though the Flames are in first right now in the division, first in the conference, is that kind of still going to be the narrative among Flames fans and observers? Like, are the players like Johnny Gaudreau and are the players like Matthew Tkachuk and Andrew Mangiapane, are they going to be able to do this when it matters come playoff time?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. So many teams, like, that's what they rely on. That's Alexander Ovechkin in the playoffs. That's the kind of performances that you need. It's been the cloud that's hung over this core group. And you saw it heading into this season. Like, there was such a demand for change. I think fans wanted Matthew Tkachuk out of here last year. Did Johnny Gaudreau really want to be here? It's been a long haul for this core group. Sean Monahan, Michael Backlund. I think it's been a big question. What is this group made of? Can they produce when it matters? Can they provide their team offense in the playoffs? And they had, I think it was, I can't remember now, but I think it was like 1 point in the 2019 playoffs and wasn't much better in the bubble. And then of course they missed the playoffs last year. So it's so critical. In the 2018-19 season, that top line, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and Elias Lindholm. Now Sean Monahan has slipped down the depth chart, but and it's Matthew Tkachuk on that line with Elias Lindholm at center. That 2018-19 year was so dominant for that first line. Like, they had career years and could score every night, it seemed. Were on incredible point streaks. But then you got to the playoffs and it was like, where were these guys? So it's critical. Then the adversity thing is another question I have. What happens when things get tough? Like, what happens? I've seen it. When they've lost so many in a row, pretty devastating losses, or you look at the Jets, you look at their losses, they were so close in the first game and then just, inches, and then things really started to snowball in terms of their losses. So it's you learn most about, obviously in life, you learn about people when they are faced with adversity and they struggle. And how they get out of it. So you wonder what the Flames are capable of when things don't go their way. What if they get a big injury? What if Johnny Gaudreau goes down and breaks his hand? What if Jacob Markstrom gets a concussion like he did last year? It's funny. Like, I'm so skeptical. I've covered this team for, I think, 8-9 seasons now. I've covered like one playoff win.
We're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, exactly. One playoff round win. Who are they? And I think every team chases that. Every team thinks that every team's fan base thinks that they're mediocre until they get to the playoffs, until they win in the playoffs and ultimately win the Stanley Cup. But it's I don't know. I haven't seen it from the Flames yet, so you still wonder. And you listen to other pundits across the league and prognosticators, and it's the Flames have that. Like, people are like, I don't know if they're for real, but.
Well, so far they are, and that's all that matters on the standings, right?
Listen, I'm still going to get on my green construction hat from 2004.
Yes, right?
I was there. Second round. I was in Calgary, Sea of Red. It was awesome.
Yeah. The hard hat is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. My colleague Wes Gilbertson was there for Jerome McGinley's induction in Toronto, and he tweeted a picture of the hard hat. And then it was like a police hat for a while. I don't know what they have now. It's what did the Jets have? Do they have a hard hat of the game, or?
They have the players. They have a fighter
like
helmet.
A fighter helmet.
Ah,
Yeah, tying into the whole Jets, theme and everything. Yeah, they haven't been giving out the fighter helmet very often as of late, though. And the Jets hope that changes tonight as they do battle with the Flames in Calgary. It's a 9:00 Central Time puck drop. Kristen Anderson and Maggie will be covering it for Post Media. Kristen, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We always appreciate your time and insight.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thanks,
Kristen. We'll do it again real soon. There she goes. Kristen Anderson joining us on the program. When we go to break, when we come back, we're going to be joined by John Matisz of thescore.com. He's got a great new podcast series called When Goalies Were Weird. I'm sort of surprised that goalies still aren't weird, but we'll talk about that with John coming up next. Much more on the Jets and the Flames as well. Stay with us. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live Saturday morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back Saturday morning, just before the bottom of the hour. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning with very busy day in store for us. Dave will have coverage of the Moose and the Texas Stars. Did I get that right? Okay, Dave will have cover with the Moose and the Texas Stars this afternoon, so you can check that out, of course, on illegalcurve.com. We'll have the Illegal Curve post-game show later tonight following the Jets and the Flames. You can also join us on our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve throughout the course of tonight's game to talk about the Jets and the Flames, and then join us back here on our YouTube channel. A very busy Saturday in store with the Jets and the Flames and the Moose and the Stars. Keep it locked on illegalcurve.com. com. And while you're at it, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, smash the like button, and do all those things that we ask you to do each and every time you join us here online. No game day skate for the Winnipeg Jets, of course, given that it's a back-to-back, so we won't know until later on this evening what the lineup is going to look like, but certainly people will be keeping a close eye on that and have a tremendous interest in how Jets head coach Paul Maurice recalibrates the team following yesterday's debacle in St. Paul, Minnesota. We're pleased to be joined on the show now by our very good friend, the senior hockey writer for thescore.com, John Matisz, joins us to talk about his brand new podcast, When Goalies Were Weird. John, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
No problem, guys. Good morning. I hope the aesthetics are okay. I hope I sound all right. I'm actually at my parents' house. They're moving out of my childhood home, so we're sort of collecting the odd thing. So I'm in my childhood bedroom, and I don't know like what the acoustics are like. I don't know, Mike. I hope we're
perfect,
okay.
John. I like that wood paneling. It kind of looks like my basement. Beauty.
Yeah, and there's this couch that is just absolutely horrendous in terms of style in the 2020s. But I guess it's fitting because in the 90s I was actually in this room growing up, and that's what the podcast is about. So, kind of a coincidence there, but there's certainly a connection.
There you go. Very apropos. I mean, John, when the goalies were weird, episode 1 about Dominik Hasek, and before we sort of talk about that, I'm going to say, for those of us in Winnipeg who are used to Connor Hellebuck and his, let's call them idiosyncrasies, I think people here would be surprised that it's past tense about goalies being weird, where I think plenty of goalies still to this day are weird, but it certainly was the heyday of interesting goalies, and that's what you're covering in the podcast. Maybe sort of give a brief overview of all the different episodes, and then we'll get into some of the particulars.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who takes offense to the past tense part of the name, don't get it wrong. I mean, we think goalies are still weird. They certainly still are. They were weird in the 80s and 70s as well. It's just we wanted to center it, when goalies were weird and kind of like just put it in a moment in time when they were the weirdest. When goalies were weirdest doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. So that's how we landed on that, just kind of simplifying things. But yeah, so it's about 1990s era goalies, and although we certainly focus on the weirdness, the strangeness, the oddball aspect of some of these guys, it's also a bit of a love letter in a way to goaltending, to that era of goaltending specifically, where you've got some all-time greats. I mean, we can debate all day long about Hasek versus Waugh versus Brodeur. Mm-hmm. You've got some other fantastic goalies at Belfour. So in terms of the idea and the concept and the premise, it all came back to just brainstorming with my bosses. How can we make a podcast that's a little different? That's not your everyday podcast. That's not run of the mill or one of 200. And there's a lot of good hockey podcasts out there, but we wanted to do something different. And we thought with my skill set, this is probably the way to go about it, which is a narrative podcast. And we really wanted to focus on goalies just because there's so much there. As you guys know, as fellow content creators or analysts, whatever you want to call us, we like when there's layers. So there's a lot of meat on the bone with these guys. I mean, whether it's Hasek and him being not only a super unusual goalie in terms of playing style and the way he thought the game, but off the ice, very unusual. One phrase or term that I heard a lot when I talked to his teammates was that he was a different bird, which, you read between the lines and you're like, okay, he was a strange guy and did some strange things. So we dig into their personality. We dig into their big moments. We dig into their superstitions. For example, Ron Hextall, he famously would sway back and forth right before warmups. No one would talk to him. That would be a cardinal sin. And he'd spit into a trash can. He had this whole very, methodical, meticulous way of going about his business before puck drop. And that's just one guy. I mean, we do 5 episodes zeroed in on the, one guy. So it goes Hasek was this week. Next week is Waugh. Week after that is Hextall. And then Belfour, and then Curtis Joseph is our 5th episode. And then the 6th one, we decided to kind of put a bonus episode vibe to it. So we have 4 different goalies being represented in that episode and just sort of going in and out of their stories in segments. So it's Jim Carrey off the top, probably the most mysterious goalie of all time, maybe, but certainly of the 90s, because he came in, won a Vezina, and then just left and retired after like 5 years in the league. And apparently, according to his teammates and people who knew him back then, the passion wasn't necessarily there. So there's that with him. And then also the relation to Jim Carrey, the actor, and how this is when the Mask was coming out, and Ace Ventura, and the Washington Capitals.
Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel.
Exactly. So the ironic thing there is that even though the teams that he played on, like the Washington Capitals, they love to play that up. I mean, why not, right? It's perfect marketing. But apparently Jim Carrey, the goalie, was completely opposite, and he wasn't really a fan of these comparisons. So he's an oddball and sort of like he's just a very everyday guy who happened to be really good at goaltending. Sure. And then so we have him in that 6th episode. We have Damian Rhodes, who had some pretty wacky superstitions, including wearing a leopard print jock, and he thought it was, making him be a better goalie.
So Drew, you're not the only one.
No, that's right.
I love that Drew's a goalie. I didn't know that.
I'm not. I just wear it around the house.
No, that's not true. In the Jewish floor hockey league, Drew was a goalie.
That's true. In the Jewish floor, my wife likes how it looks.
Oh my god!
All right,
I love that. And then we have Gar Snow, who had this oversized equipment. He really pushed the boundaries with the equipment, and he was also a big trash talker. And then finally, in that 6th episode, to wrap it up, and also to wrap the series up, we go to Martin Brodeur, who was very normal, but we thought, hey, if we're talking about all these great goalies, how do we not talk about Martin Brodeur? Oh. So that wraps things up and sort of is a good contrast to all the previous 9 goalies that we talk about, because Martin was just, and still is, a pretty normal guy. I mean, look at the jersey that he designed for the New Jersey Devils. I think that says a lot right there. Pretty plain and simple guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you knew this. I'm a Devils fan going back to the Scotty Niedermayer, Scott Stevens day, Brodeur days as well. And when that jersey came out, because they've never had an alternate jersey, they've had retro jerseys before. Let's just say that I mean, I can't speak for all Devils fans, but I was a little underwhelmed by that jersey. Maybe it'll look better when it's actually on the ice. But just going back to the podcast, and as soon as we were texting about this and how it was coming out, like I just knew we had to have you on and listen to the first episode. And we encourage everybody who's watching and listening on the podcast to listen to the first episode with Dominik Hasek. And I want to go back to that first episode, John, because, well, first off, it's the only one that's been released so far, obviously. But what stood out to me is he always had that great personality. But when you had Jim Corsi on, who's the goaltending coach of the Buffalo Sabres, and the thing that I thought was really interesting, he was saying that all these crazy acrobatic saves that we've all seen hundreds of times, and some of us watched live. I mean, you think that this was just kind of, luck, whereas it wasn't. And it shows you how hard he worked and how he really, I think you'd agree, he reinvented, the goalie position. Some of these other goalies also had a big part in the evolution of goaltending, like obviously Patrick Waugh, Butterfly, everything like that. But, just what kind of stood out to you talking to Dominik Hasek and putting this first episode together? Because I agree with you. I think it's hard. It's kind of that, debate, that water cooler debate. Who's the best of all time, Hasek, Waugh, or Brodeur? But, it's kind of hard to argue with Dominik Hasek, with all the Hart trophies and the Vezina trophies and obviously the Olympic gold back in '98.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the GOAT case for him. You brought up the Vezinas. He had 6 in an 8-year span, which is just absolutely nutty. While he's going up against these other great goalies, right? Like, he was just a cut above. And he played on, like, good teams, but not great teams. A lot of those Buffalo Sabres squads were pretty good defensively, and some of that had to do with Hasek. They had a couple of 20, 30 goal scorers, but they certainly weren't contending for cups, except for when they really hit it in, the late 90s when they went to the cup final. But there were some fairly lean years there. So you have to put that into the equation. What did his team look like and how did he lift them? So he wins 2 Harts. He wins 2, I think they were called Ted Lindsay's at that point, but they would be Pearsons now, or maybe I'm getting them mixed up. Yeah, I'm getting them mixed up. But basically the players thought he was also the best in the league. So there's that. There's the hardware. And then there's also the fact that when you look at the numbers, save percentage is way better than goals against in terms of goaltending analysis. And unfortunately in the 90s, we didn't have much else beyond those 2 stats. So now you have, goals saved above average, goals saved above expected, like just better statistics. But if we just go by save percentage, which is decent, he, one season in 98-99, so the year that the Sabres went to the Cup, he had, I think it was a 937 save percentage, and the league average was something like 906. So he just absolutely destroyed the league average. And it wasn't just, this small moment in time that he did that. I think he had 7 seasons that he was 0.20 higher than the league average. Like, that's just insane, right? 0.20 is a lot when you look at save percentage. So the Dominator is just such a good nickname for him because he was dominant. Like, that's really the only word to use. And I also love that he's become synonymous with the word unorthodox. Whenever anyone talks about his style, that word seems to be part of the response or part of the monologue. I think it's very fair because even though, say, Cujo, for example, was unorthodox as well, he wasn't quite to the same degree as Hasek, who I feel like is a 1 in a million, 1 in a lifetime, 1 in the history of the sport kind of guy, because he not only was like insanely flexible and athletic, I guess those go hand in hand, the physical attributes, but he was really smart. And I think that's something that's been forgotten in time, or maybe just hasn't been unraveled to the right extent, because it wasn't necessarily his physical gifts that resulted in those crazy saves, the scorpion heel save, the, just flopping around the crease. I mean, the highlight reel that he has is just insane.
Yeah.
A lot of that was him reading the play and being one step ahead of the forward, or the shooter, I should say, and kind of like rhythmically getting there. And he also I think he just liked to not necessarily entertain, but it kind of got him in the zone to play that way. So one thing I really learned about Hasek in talking to him and talking to Jim Corsi and also Mitch Koren, who's very important to Hasek's story, because when they met in Buffalo, Koren said, no one's really been coaching you. And that's okay because you're one of the top goalies in the world already, and you've barely even hit your stride. But I'm gonna tweak a couple things. I'm gonna polish you, and I'm not gonna step on what makes you great. But let's work together. And that's also something that can't be forgotten, is the influence of Koren. So I talked to Koren, Corsi, and Hasek about how he became Hasek, because he was in the Czechoslovakia absolutely destroying that league. He won 5 Goal of the Year honors. He won a couple MVPs. His team won championships, while the Chicago Blackhawks weren't sure what to do with him. This is, the late 80s, when no one was really coming over from Europe, at least from those European countries. And it was this awkward thing where they're like, we think he's good, but he's playing in this lower league, and we already have Ed Belfour in our system. We have all these other goalies. So it's also crazy to think of the what if of not only if Hasek stayed in Chicago and Chicago chose him over Belfour and traded Belfour, but also what if he came over earlier, because he was kind of not wasting years, because he ended up playing like 20 years or something in the league. Yeah, he was very, very durable, but still, there was a couple years there where he could have been marinating in the minors, then boom, come up to the NHL and hit it off right away. So yeah, Hasek is just endlessly fascinating to me, and that's why we put him in the first episode.
And John, it was funny because I was going to say, one of the things you can't help but think about when you think of Hasek is that save he made in '92 on Lemieux in the Stanley Cup Finals, where he did this sliding stop. You mentioned that name, that's immediately what comes to mind. I mean, there's so many of those highlights with him. And one of the things I was curious about with this series is how receptive were the guys that you spoke to? Were they easy to get to? Were they happy to be part of this, regardless of the name, but just the idea of being, going back and talking about their history, and how open were they to this process?
Yeah, so we didn't talk to Patrick Waugh. We requested him twice through the Quebec Remparts, where he is a part owner and coach. So, I mean, he doesn't do like any media. So, I mean, we didn't take it personally. It's just kind of the name of the game.
Are still weird.
Yeah, exactly. So he's pretty off the radar with media in general. So it was like our expectations were quite low. Hextall was good. He's a very kind of mild-mannered guy, even though he was a bit of a lunatic on the ice. And he's in a GM role, so he's used to the media thing. And then we haven't been able to track down Joseph. I guess I should talk about that in the past tense because the episode's wrapped up. But the Leafs PR and Leafs alumni relations teams both tried to reach out to him, didn't hear back. So again, these guys are retired. They don't have sort of this responsibility to be on call, so to speak. So we used his book a lot to sort of bring in his perspective, because he released a book a couple of years ago and it was really good. And then Belfour, we did get. So we got 3 out of the 5 goalies. They were all like fairly receptive. I mean, getting these guys for a large or lengthy amount of time is difficult. But Hasek was good. There's a bit of a language barrier there. I mean, obviously he knows English and understands English well, but to get that good quote that you can include in an episode, it can be difficult. Belfour was pretty reflective, and Hextall was also pretty good. But yeah, with this kind of thing, not even like put the weird thing aside, but just when you do a profile on someone in general.
Mm-hmm.
I find from my experience on the writing side and then now on the podcast side with the narrative podcast, you're getting the best stuff from teammates, from coaches, from friends, from family. Like imagine Drew, we were doing a narrative podcast on your life.
How many hours and how many episodes do you have on this one?
That needs to happen, by the way.
Yeah, maybe it'd be.
John,
Can you please make that happen? Can you talk to your producer, John?
John, I thought we were supposed to be appealing to a wide audience.
There's a lot of skeletons in that closet, let me tell you.
Yeah, see? So would this is great, because would Drew ever say, I know you're joking, Ezra, but would Drew ever say anything like, oh yeah, this happened this time, it was embarrassing, or this happened this time, I was amazing. Yeah, I mean, maybe Drew's a bad example because he's got a big head.
John, after the show, I'm going to give you Sheldon Mindell's number. That's Drew's dad. You're going to want to talk to him. You could probably do a podcast just similar to Patrick Waugh. You don't even need Drew in it. Sheldon is going to take care of you.
I love it. That's the thing. You guys are making my point for me where, like, whenever I do profiles or deep dives on people, yeah, you want to talk to them. You want to confirm stories. You want to ask them about certain things, especially their childhood, because, I mean, they lived it. But in terms of, like, what made you great? What were your superstitions? They always downplay it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nice to get, like, for example, for the Hextall episode, Garth Snow was, as you guys will find out when you listen to it, he's a star of the episode because he just, like, is really into the stories that he's telling, really insightful, and they were partners. So there's just a real bond there. We try to identify a lot of partners because sometimes it can go well, sometimes it won't. With Belfour, for example, we contacted a bunch of his partners. Only one responded, Chris Clifford. He was his IHL partner. The rest didn't, and that I don't think that's a coincidence. He did not get along with his partners, and I asked Belfour. So that's a good example. I asked Belfour about that, and he kind of turned it around and said, it was actually the backups that didn't get along with me because I was taking up all the starts. They're competitive. It started, a rift. And so that's interesting, right? Because it's a different perspective. Is it true? I don't know. But that's an example of, like, okay, we got to ask him about this. But at the end of the day, the bulk of the episode is built around the teammates, the coaches, the friends, whoever. For example, in terms of family, we talked to Leah Hextall, who is Ron Hextall's cousin. So we tried to reach far and wide. We talked to an equipment manager, an agent. So we tried to do our best in that regard.
John, last question for you. What's your favorite story?
Wow.
I mean, I know it's an impossible question, and I know it's probably, maybe giving away a little bit of the, giving away the milk without buying the cow. But what's your favorite story in the different podcast episodes?
Actually, yeah. Okay. So there's one in Belfour, and Steve McKeegan, he's a goalie coach. He used to be a goalie coach for the Maple Leafs when Belfour was there. He is similar to Snow in the in the Hextall episode. He kind of steals the show a little bit. So McKeegan has these great stories, and one he tells about Belfour when they first met. So Belfour just kind of called him up out of the blue and was like, "Hey, I'd like to train with you." And McKeegan was dealing, he dealt with all these different age groups and skill levels. And Belfour left a message, and he's kind of like mumbling and rambling. And he goes, yeah, I let in a goal against Philadelphia in the playoffs, and, like, I really want to change this or that. And then so McKeegan's like, what? And then he calls the guys back, and it turns out it's Ed Belfour. He comes down to London, Ontario, where McKeegan is doing his thing, or it's technically Strathroy. And they get working together, and actually before they get on the ice, they're doing dryland training, and McKeegan has this group of athletes. It's a lot of 14, 15-year-olds, some elite sprinters, some elite, baseball players, whatever, hockey players. And they're all getting ready to do a 45-minute run. And Belfour hasn't been invited. He doesn't have to do this by any means. I mean, at this point, he already is basically a Hall of Famer. Like, he's pretty far in his career. but he insists on going on this run, and it's kind of a competition. I mean, it's just bragging rights, but everyone's kind of dialed in. So they start running, and with about 5 minutes left, Belfour catches this kid, Michael McCarthy. He passes him, and he wins the race. And he pukes on McKeegan's shoes. And as McKeegan tells it, he's looking up at McKeegan. There's puke coming out of his mouth, and he basically says, like, I beat that kid. Like, I did it. I'm the champion or whatever. Like, I'm putting words in his mouth, but to paraphrase. And then, McKeegan's just blown away. He's like, dude, you didn't need to do that. And also, like, you went to very great lengths to beat a 14-year-old. And the kicker is that apparently when they catch up, they'll catch up here and there every couple months or whatever. Belfour always brings up this Michael McCarthy kid. He's like, what's up with Michael McCarthy? Does he remember that I beat him when, back in 2006 or whatever it was? So I thought that was great. I mean, it's one of those kind of legend building stories.
It's like when Kramer beats up the kids in the karate episode of Seinfeld.
Dojo.
He's dominating the dojo against toddlers.
Yeah. And I mean, McKeegan told it because he wanted to really dig into or extrapolate on how competitive this guy was. Yeah. And that's the thing about, well, first of all of the guys that we profiled are insanely competitive. I think you needed to be a professional athlete in general, and then to be a goalie where it's like you're fighting for your life out there, right? You have one bad night. Oh, you're back up. Oh, you're back in the minors. Like, it's very unforgiving. But these great guys, I mean, whether it was Waugh, Hasek, Belfour, to focus on those those three specifically, if there was a 99th percentile of competitiveness in the NHL history, they would be there. And I think there's an argument that Belfour would be number one based on the stories, the anecdotes, and just like, I'll put it this way. My sort of opening line, my icebreaker with all these people we talked to, whether it was, for this episode, that episode, it was what comes to mind when you hear the name blank, Dominic Hasek, Ed Belfour, whatever, just to see where they take it. And with Belfour, it was always intense or intensity that they said, or competitor or competitive. I swear every single one. So that says a lot, right? Where people just can't get it out of their head how insanely competitive this guy was. And McKeegan's story with Michael McCarthy, the 14-year-old that Belfour beat in a 45-minute run, that was really meaningless at the end of the day. I think that exemplifies it pretty well.
The podcast is called When Goalies Were Weird. It's with our good friend John Matisz of thescore.com. It's available wherever all your best podcasts can be found: Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Castbox, and Pocket Casts. And of course, also available through thescore.com. John, terrific work. It's a great project. The first episode was fantastic to listen to, and I'm looking forward to all the other episodes dropping and hearing some more great stories about these idiosyncratic and unique individuals from the world of hockey.
Appreciate you guys having me on, and I look forward to digging into your life, Drew, in this next narrative series.
I don't think 6 episodes will do it justice. It might
be like
a
split between Drew and Mike McCarthy, trying to find him and Drew Mindell.
There you go.
I can tell you what, I've never beaten anybody in a race for 45 minutes, and nor have I ever ran for 45 minutes. So that episode will be a lot shorter. John, awesome. Thank you. We'll do it again real soon, buddy.
Thanks a lot, John.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
There he goes. John Matisz of The Score joining us on the program. We encourage everybody to download that great podcast. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. We'll get you set for the Moose and the Stars and the Jets and the Flames, and then the IC post-game show later on tonight. It's a busy Saturday. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back on the Illegal Curve. Dave's got an Eddie the Eagle Belfour. Is that an autograph, Dave? What is that?
Autographed.
To David, best of luck. Is that what that says? And
To David, best of luck, Eddie Belfour.
Are you sure it doesn't say Michael McCarthy? I think it might say Michael McCarthy.
No.
Dave, you got to tell the story behind that, though.
Yeah, the story behind this, Eddie the Eagle Belfour. So back in the day, my uncle was a teacher out in St. Leon, Manitoba, and he used to drive through Carman. And my uncle was an amazing cartoonist, and he was really good at drawing and a talent I unfortunately don't possess, but
So people to do drawings for you on your behalf.
I guess so. So anyway, so basically he was going out there and he must have known Eddie's parents somehow and knew where they were in Carman. And so he like I said, he drew off of mine and my cousin's hockey cards, and he drew those pictures of Ed Belfour, and he took him out to his parents' house, and his parents said, sure. I don't know how exactly how the conversation came about, but essentially they said, leave him with us. And he was good enough to sign them for a young me and my cousin as well. And it's a nice memory of Eddie the Eagle Belfour right here, and a nice memory of my uncle.
There you go. That's a good story. Really puts a cap on the interview with John Matisz.
I should have had it for when John was here. I could have showed it to him.
I was going to say, if you should have whipped it out at that point. Whipped out the magazine. Let's be clear.
Easy.
Easy.
Let's save that for the Drew Mindell experience when John's telling that one.
That's right. The 10-part narrative about my life.
It's going to be frightening.
God help us all. With the Jets and the Flames later on tonight, post-game show will be in about a little less than 13 hours from now, right around 11:45 p.m. Come back here to the Illegal Curve post-game show on our YouTube channel. Smash the like button, subscribe to our channel. We got a busy day
Thanks,
ahead
Dallas.
for
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you to Dallas for that nice compliment. Thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. We'll see you on illegalcurve.com. Dave will have his Moose recap. We'll have a Minuk Moose Minute later on tonight. It'll be a very busy day in store. Very busy. There you go. Put the antlers on. There you go. Put them on.
I can't put them on unless I'm doing the Moose.
Okay,
Moose
fine.
Minute.
Put them on.
I'm becoming like a prop comic here. I got all these little props beside me.
That's good. It's about time you add a little bit of color to your background in addition to the fire and the cartoon and the David's room and everything. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Ezzy. Want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. They make this show possible. They make the website a possibility as well. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Tough Duck Bagel Smith, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, as he's wearing the Fireball toque, and our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Support these fine businesses because of their support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We hope everybody has a great Saturday. We'll see you back here in about a little more than 12 hours time. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.